In a new terrifying diktat, the Taliban regime of Afghanistan has now threatened women of flogging and stoning them to death in public as punishment for adultery. The edicts by Taliban is another blow to the rights of women in the country who have already been deprived of their rights to education, employment and movement in public spaces. Meanwhile, the women suffer in silence and the world remains a mute spectator.
It's been over 2 years since the Taliban regained control of Afghanistan, and their draconian measures are making headlines once again. Public stonings for adultery, harsh interpretations of Sharia law, it's a grim reality. The Taliban supreme leader recently announced the enforcement of their strict laws, citing a fight against Western influences. But it's the women who bear the brunt of these policies. The Taliban supreme leader, Hibatullah Akhundzada, in an audio broadcast on the Taliban-controlled radio television of Afghanistan said, "You say it's a violation of women's rights when we stone them to death. But we will soon implement the punishment for adultery. We will flog women in public. We will stone them to death in public." Human rights groups are sounding the alarm, pointing fingers at the international community for their silence, which they say has emboldened the Taliban. Afghan women's future hangs in the balance.
I was one of those who experienced the same thing in the first time Taliban were in power. And now the next generation of my sisters, all of a sudden, in a matter of a blink of an eye, saw everything collapse and experienced the same thing. They're doing it under the name of Islam. We know it's in contradiction with Islamic principles.
That for us, Afghan women, Muslim women, it is not just our right. It goes much deeper than that. This is our duty. And for me, closing schools for a woman who has been ordered to learn is exactly like if I am fasting, someone will shove food in my mouth. Or if I'm praying that someone will stand in front of me, will not allow me to bend.
Since taking power, the Taliban have issued over 80 official orders, with more than half directly impacting women and girls. They've restricted movement, education, and even attire, enforcing a strict hijab rule of women in the country. Schools have reopened, but for millions of girls, education remains out of reach. They're confined to their homes, imprisoned by Taliban decrees. Despite the challenges, Afghan women cling to hope, waiting for the international community to step in and bring about change.
Repressive policies of the Taliban, unless reversed, will exacerbate instability and undermine institutional predictability, both of which are very crucial for economic growth and stability. No one thrives until everybody thrives. So my urge to international community is, while we continue to speak about economic empowerment and economic growth in these countries, this cannot be achievable by simultaneously stressing on the importance of women's rights, women's dignity, and human rights for all.
As the world watches, the plight of Afghan women underscores the urgent need for action. Their voices may be stifled, but their resilience shines through in the face of adversity. For now, the future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the world cannot afford to turn a blind eye to the plight of Afghan women.